Welcome back, everybody. In this video, I'm going to be testing the limits of GB Studio. By doing that, I'm going to be creating scenes that are full of actors. I'm going to be duplicating the background images in the files in order to create excess of files, and I will try and make each scene unique, but also have it connected to the next and fill it with actors. Like I said, each actor I want to have a script on it so that it's as if you have a script on yours. And I will just be copy and pasting that around until I reach a huge number and it breaks, or until I am so tired from copy and pasting that I can't go on any longer. The scenes will be, screen size. If you want me to, I can come back and do another video in the future where I make them as big as I can in order to test that version of how big the game can be. But hopefully, by the end of this video, we both have an understanding of how much we can get away with in our GB Studio games. As you know, I'm making Ticket Racing 2, and I want over 200 cars in it, so I need to know if more than 400 scenes work correctly. And I'd love to be able to know if there is a limit on the number of scenes specifically, or if it's to do with the file size, or maybe the scripts on the actors. And so once I break it, I can try and strip it back and see where it broke, and how you can optimize your games possibly. So as you can see here, I've made a background, just like a messy sun set over the sea. I've deliberately made it so that it has these non-repeating bits to increase the tile amount. I've also got a frame or an actor here that has 24 frames. And hopefully this will help bring everything to its limit, and we can hopefully get as close as we can to breaking GB Studio to understand a bit about it. So what I'm going to do is export this as an image and call it 001. What I'm going to do is try and get as many of these 00s as I can in order to replicate what it would be like if you had multiple files saved into your backgrounds folder. So let's just start with 001. Okay, so I found a way of speeding this up, and I'm just going to highlight them and then copy them and paste them. Okay, so this may break my laptop, but I hope not. They're very small file sizes in comparison to what you would normally have on a Windows device. Obviously, this is for Game Boy, so the actual file sizes are in kilobytes, getting up to megabytes once you've built the game. So this shouldn't really be a problem for my laptop. As you can see, we're already getting quite far. And obviously the naming convention isn't perfect. Obviously I called it background, and then it becomes background copy and background copy in brackets. So it's already getting pretty far. We can actually come out of this file and then right click and go into properties, and hopefully that will tell us how many files are inside. 193. So I'm going to keep going until it's near enough 500, maybe even more. I kind of want to, what I'm really doing this for is to test what the limits are with my game that I'm making. And it might be that the background, because it's the same image, it doesn't actually count. But honestly, I don't know. The annoying thing will be setting each background in GB Studio. Okay, so I'm going to go back out again and test how many that we have. Okay, we now have 757 files, so I think that's more than enough. So what I'm going to do now is create a single scene where I might even make the player character. So first of all, I need to export this 24 frame sprite sheet. So you see we've already met the 24 frame limit, and the player I'm going to change to it as well. And then there's obviously 10 actor limit in each scene. Obviously, I hope that you have a good understanding of what is possible inside a scene, and I won't go over exactly you know, what the limits are in a single scene, because there are limits on each actor. For example, if I had a switch, so switch, a switch is honestly one of the most like CPU intensive things. You see, there's all this stuff here, and I'm guessing it's not a very smoothly run thing. But if I have multiple switches, we can press run and see what happens. So there's 3 and then 4. Obviously, there's nothing actually running inside the switch, so it might not be that bad, but I'm going to try it anyway. Might take a minute. Okay, so that built perfectly fine. And if I also build the ROM, we can see how big the ROM is. And obviously, technically, all it has is a single scene and one actor, which has some switches on it, and then a player, right? So obviously, it built pretty quickly. And if we look at the ROM size, we can see that the size says 1.28 kilobytes. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is try and push the boundaries of this actor. I'm going to keep pasting these switches. I might even put a switch within a switch within a switch just to increase it even more. Okay, guys, so you see this? I've made a switch full of switches. I think there's like 8 switches in there, and they each also set a value on like whatever, you know, they're just sets of value, and they're using variables. They're like referencing variables, and then I've copied and pasted that 8 times or whatever, and I press play, and it says that the script is too big for bank 1. You see here it's 16,849 bytes, and it must be under this amount. So if I remove 1 possibly, it might be enough. So if I just press delete then here and then run it again, then it should, I'm hoping it will work. The fact it's not instantly going to that means that I think I've mended that. And what that means is we're using almost the maximum amount of bytes in this actor alone. So what I'm going to do if this runs is I'm going to duplicate this around 10 times to fill the scene with them. And hopefully what that will mean is that I'm filling each scene with as many bytes as I can. And my intention is to do is to just max out the bytes in each scene, so that when we copy and paste each scene, we're also copy and pasting as many bytes as we can. And hopefully that should mean that we fill up the game surprisingly fast. That's my intention anyway. It might not go to plan, and it might just break us very quickly because of the fact I'm using so many bytes. I almost hope that's the case, so I can teach you about, obviously, the dangers of using switches. But you can see there's a lot of switches here. And it might be that because it's all the same thing, that it doesn't actually take up as much as if it was all unique. So your own code might take up more space, but we will have to see. Okay, so it runs. And when we interact, it should technically go through those switches. Which in my games I found that it like does create some lag the more stuff it has to do, but for now it's working fine. So what I'm going to do now is duplicate this around 10 times. Let's just do rows of 3 and then an extra 1. Okay, so you see now we're basically at the frame limit. We're at the actor limit. I could add some at the trigger limit. So I'll just copy this script, paste it onto this trigger, and I'll keep the trigger quite small, I think, just so I can fit as many as I can. And obviously it says 30 is the maximum. So let's try and do that. Okay, so we're now at the trigger limit, and obviously we're at the actor limit. We're basically at the frame limit. So let's build this scene and see if it is capable of building. The fact it hasn't instantly taken us to the warning screen gives me hope. So I think we can then, once this builds, we can then build it as a ROM, see how much this takes up specifically. Okay, so it built, which means that obviously your scenes can handle this. So now what I'm going to do is press export as a ROM and see the size of the game file now. Keep in mind, I've just changed the background to this thing. We have 30 triggers, 10 actors, 24 frames, in a single scene, and they all have a lot of bytes filling them up with the switches, like as you can see here. What I'm hoping is it's still at the 128. I hope that's the case because I don't want the game to be, fill up too fast. If it's already at 1 megabyte, I might be quite scared. So I would love to hear your predictions in the comments. Okay, so here it is. So let's click on it and then right-click Properties. It's 1 megabyte already. It's already at 1 megabyte. So I have a feeling it's not going to take long for this to fill up to 4 megabytes, where I think that the limit is. So obviously 30 triggers all with that on will not be ideal, right? So I'm hoping that is that's the main issue. So it might be, I would imagine that if there is no connection to a scene, that it won't actually impact the build. But I would like to be wrong on that. It would make sense that if it's in the project here, if it's in the game, what's it called, the game world, then it probably has an impact on the file size of the game. As you can see here, it's taking a while for it to copy and paste. So I can imagine all of these bytes that are filling up this is not going to be very well. So if we think about like where we can expect this to go, if one scene with all of that stuff is 1 megabyte, it could be imagined that 4 scenes is 4 megabyte. But it's a hard thing to say. I don't know what to expect. That's why I'm doing this testing. So I'm going to make sure that every single scene has a different background. It's called something different, obviously. Technically, it's the same background using the same tiles, but I'm hoping GB Studio references it each specifically, and that like saves that in its file. But I'm kind of doubting that the more I think about it. So let's press play and see what happens. That took forever to build, so I'm interested to see what the ROM size looks like. Okay, that took pretty long as well, so let's check out the file size. Four megabytes, and I think that might be the limit. I would love to, double this and see if we can, increase it, but it's very interesting that we're already at that limit. What I'm thinking about now is if we were to put what we're using in these actors and triggers on a custom event and had that custom event on each of the actors and triggers instead of the raw script, if that would be a smaller file size. First of all, though, I'm just going to double this up and see if we can, get this to 8 megabytes. I kind of doubt it, but let's see. Okay, so as you can see, I duplicated the top row down onto the bottom. I've put on new scenes, scene backgrounds onto each of these, and I press run, and as you can see, it's running. So we will either see this go up to up from 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes right now, or it won't build, or it will stay at 4 megabytes and somehow work. But here's a piece of information that we've definitely learnt already, is that having scenes that your player can't access still contribute to the file size. So if you have backgrounds in your game, in the game world, the game world is this screen here where you can move around. Currently, I can't move around. It's lagging too much because of its building. In this scene area, that contributes to file size. If it's connected to the player scene or wherever, it still contributes. Okay, so if you have scenes that are unused and you need to save file size, delete those scenes. Okay, and also we can, if you have a scene that are duplicates of each other, that have actors in that do exactly the same stuff, but you could just have it all happen in one scene. And for example, you use 2 triggers instead of 1, or maybe you just have expanded functionality on a single trigger. Then I recommend making sure that you do as much as you can in a single scene before duplicating the scene and making it happen in something else, because you're physically doubling that, especially with the raw scripts, which I've already touched upon. So after this is run and we see the file size, I will put the raw script into a custom event instead, and we can test the same thing again with a custom event on everything. I'm hoping that by having custom events instead of all these raw switches here, as you know, I've duplicated them on everything, right? So hopefully by having this in a custom event and having the custom event on everything, it will technically be only referencing it once rather than 30, or actually it's 40 times in this scene. So I hope that that is true. If it's not, I will be kind of disappointed, as it kind of means that custom events are no different than a normal, event. I would want it to be that custom events help you save file size, but we will see. Okay, that took forever, and now it's blank. So my reckoning is that this didn't work. I think I think it's true that GB Studio can only build up to 4 megabytes. So if I press export as ROM, we'll be able to see this in reality, I hope. I'm expecting this will take forever, and I might have to come back tomorrow and test those ROMs I created and tell you if this one does actually work on a Game Boy or not. I expect it doesn't. And then I'll get back with turning everything into a custom event and testing it, testing the 4 scenes that way, and seeing how many megabytes it is, and then stripping it all back and seeing how many scenes we can get going. So I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. I'm going to be back tomorrow to finish this video. Okay, I'm back. I was testing the I loaded up those games I made onto my Game Boy, and as I expected, the 8 megabyte one did not work, just like it didn't run in GB Studio here. So now I've deleted everything, and I've put the switch that we had, all of these switches, onto a custom event, and as you can see, it's to test the efficiency of custom events. So what I'm going to do is create a fresh scene, and this I've realized that this, obviously, like it said before, is near enough 16,000 bytes, which I think is 16 kilobytes. And obviously times that by 40 things in the scene, times by 4, being there 4 scenes. It doesn't really get up to the 4 megabyte. It only really gets up to about 2.5 megabyte, I think. Or, yeah, 2.5 megabyte. So obviously, there's obviously a lot that goes on with other things that we don't really know about. So it might be that my math is wrong or whatever, but I'll just go back to what I was doing last episode by creating this scene and filling it with the custom events now. So as you can see, it's got the numbers on it. And then we want to add this custom event. And so we want to do custom event 1, and hopefully it doesn't take forever to do. And obviously we want to actually choose the correct variable. It doesn't really, by correct I just mean a global variable. As you can see, I spelled events wrong. It was going so slow while it was typing. It's very annoying. Yeah, you see, I just pressed E and I'm still waiting. So it's definitely not the most efficient. If you have full information in your custom event, hitting up to that byte limit, then yeah, it's gonna really tie down the speed of creating your games. So I'm just gonna put 10 here like I did last time, and then I'm going to also do that with the triggers again as well. I'm going to duplicate it 4 times and then build it again and see if it's at the 4 megabyte limit. And if it is, then we could suppose that having custom events doesn't actually change the efficiency of the code in your game. But if it does, then it means that it does affect the efficiency of the code in your game. If this was to be still at the 128 kilobyte, even once I've duplicated it 4 times, then we can kind of expect it to actually help. So I'll see if it does. Okay, and it works. So it should be exactly the same thing as last time, where we have basically 40 things with with that same script on it each, but this time they're in custom events. So if I build and run the ROM, export as a ROM, then we can see the file size, and if it's smaller than 4 megabytes, then the custom event actually helps save us bytes and lets us create bigger games. But if it doesn't, then that means that the custom event is just to make our lives easier rather than to make the game more efficient. So we'll see. As you can see, it just built. It took 746,000 milliseconds. And as you can see here, we have the game. And so let's see. This took a long time, so I'm expecting it to not have changed, which is a shame. I'll have to think about how this works. Okay, yeah, so although it was all using a single custom event, it still comes out to 4 megabytes. And what this means is that using custom events doesn't shrink this file size of your game by only referencing this one when it needs to. It still puts on the custom event onto every single thing. So the custom events are not optimized. So I hope this has been helpful. It's definitely been helpful for me. If you have a script in your game that is close to this the limit of the byte limit of 16,000 bytes, then I recommend thinking about how you implement that. You might want to have a separate scene where, depending on how your game works, obviously, some games will not be able to do this, and you'll have to have whatever it is in the scene. But if you had a scene that on initiate did what it is there, then you could use the event. I think it's if you use store current scene on stack, and then go to whichever scene you want, and then once it's done that script, then you can restore first from stack. And what that will do is mean that every time you need to do that special event, you will automatically have a scene created for that single event. So you don't have to have it on every single one of these. You just have it in one scene and go to that scene and then go back once the event is done. And I understand that will not be easy. A lot of times that will be very annoying and won't actually make sense. But I can think of some use cases for my own sake that that does actually become useful. But it's definitely annoying. I can tell you that for free. If you have a game that uses large events constantly, then you probably want to think of a way to optimize how you use them. And I'm thinking about Ticket Racing 2 as I say this, and I feel like some of my things may have to be cut down depending on how I implement them. But yeah, the custom event isn't. It doesn't actually change the efficiency of the bytes usage in your game. All it does is make it easier for you to access and make your games. So now what I want to do is I want to test how many scenes we can have in our game. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duplicate scenes around just this empty scene, as we know that a scene that hasn't got a link to it still counts towards the byte usage of the game, and therefore the file size, the final product. So I have a feeling this will take me the longest time. There is no efficient way of copy and pasting scenes. quickly, as obviously it's not intended to be quick, it's intended to be meaningful and thoughtful where you place your scenes. Okay, so I feel like I've just frozen GB Studio. So I'm thinking I'm gonna have to leave this episode here, guys. This portion of the video will take a lot longer than the last one. The last one took long, just waiting for it to build every time. So for now, let's just recap what we've learned today. So the actors and triggers are using bytes, and there is a limit on each one of over 16,000 bytes, which is like 16 kilobytes. And so if you fill a scene with that, with 40 different things using 16,000 bytes, and you duplicate that 4 times, then you'll be at the limit of GB Studio, which doesn't sound like much, meaning that it seems like, oh no, GB Studio it doesn't let you make big games, but actually 16,000 bytes 40 times is a crazy number of scripts. If you were to actually do that, that would be a lot of game. So as long as you optimize your scripts fairly well and you don't have scenes lying around with lots of bytes in them that are doing nothing, then it should be fine. We also learned that using custom events don't actually help the efficiency of the byte usage of the final game size. Instead, they are just there to make your life easier. For example, if I wanted to edit this event and take out some bytes, I could easily just delete this event, for example, and it would then be less bytes, and I'd be able to make a bigger game. And obviously, this is all just deliberately there to fill up the byte usage. So think about that when you're making your games. And I would imagine that the scene limit is almost infinite, but it's dependent on the bytes. So if there's like no bytes in a scene, then it would be just how many tiles, I guess. And also, if you're in color mode, then the colors will obviously add bytes as well. But I would love to test that in the future. But for now, I feel like I'll have to leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll put my patrons up on screen right now. If you found this useful, please let me know. I'd love to make another video on this, of obviously going over the number of scenes you can have in your game if you don't even have any bytes. That would be perfect for example, comics. But I just want to thank you again for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video if you like the video. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.